Chip, you are the founder of the Modern Elder Academy and the author of 7 books, the most recent of which is Learning to Love Midlife. So, 12 reasons why life gets better with age. So, welcome to Modern Healthspan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I love the name of your show. It's like so perfect.
Thank you. Yeah, that's definitely what we're aiming for. So,
Yeah.
Chip, could you talk a little bit about what is the key message of the book? Yeah, what is it about midlife that you're
Yeah.
extolling?
Well, let's start by saying that midlife has a bad brand. The word crisis is attached to it.
Mm,
That doesn't help anybody. So midlife's a very misunderstood life stage that actually got created really in the 20th century because I'll just use US statistics here, but in the year 1900, the average longevity was 47. By the year
mm,
2000, it was 77. So we added 3 decades of life, and we didn't add much for children, and we didn't add much for elderly. We added a lot in midlife. And
mm.
part of the reason I wanted to write the book was to help people to understand what midlife's about. But I also wanted to really focus on the 12 reasons why life gets better with age, which is the subtitle of the book, because we're very clear as a society about what gets worse with age, but we're not very clear about what gets better. And if you look at the U curve of happiness social science research, suggests that after age 50, we get happier with each decade, which is, sort of miraculous when you think about how much of an ageist society we have. Like, oh,
Mhm.
aging is terrible, but yet people after 50 get happier. So I wanted to really unpack that and help people to understand what are the more subtle things that actually do get better with age, because we know what are the things that don't get better with age.
Yes. So, when do you think midlife is? I mean, I assume it differs per person. But I mean, I've seen that you've had some fairly youngish people coming to your academy.
Yeah.
How would you define midlife? Is it like a mental state or is it something
I
physical?
think I think it is a mental state on some level because it's really the era of your life between early adulthood, however you want to define that, and later adulthood, however you want to define that. So these are not clear boundaries. So some sociologists suggest that midlife lasts from 35 to 75. It's a pretty long period of time, but if you're going to live to 100, that makes sense. And then you could ask the question, well, why 35? That seems so young. But there's a growing number of people who are millennials who are in their mid 30s who feel obsolescent because of artificial intelligence. And they're asking the kind of questions that a 45-year-old might have asked, a few years ago. So long story short is I think that midlife is a life stage in which you are going through a massive amount of transitions. And so that's so the best way to define midlife for me is to say it's that period of time in between when you feel like you're a relatively new adult and you know what you're doing and you have all that confidence, and when you get to later in life and you just like don't care as much about like what the world's doing, and you care more about your own life, and the in between period is what midlife's about.
Yes. Do you see the top end going up? I mean, so we talk about life expectancy of what, 80 something, but as you get older, then your life expectancy actually increases. So maybe it would go
Yes.
beyond 70.
Yeah. So, when in the United States, when someone says, "Oh, I'm 65 and I'm a male," and the life expectancy of a male in the US is 74, like you think you only have 9 years left. But in fact, if you have some good longevity literacy, you recognize that if you've made it to 65, the chances are, as a man, you're going to make it to 82. So you're going to live a lot longer, partly because you've gotten that far already. And if you're part of certain kinds of socioeconomic groups, maybe even further. So, yes, I do think that. I mean, let's also recognize that the United States has a particularly bad record lately around longevity. The longevity in the
Mm.
United States right now is what it was in 1996. Whereas the rest of the world, even though everybody sort of dropped off during COVID, everything's come back. and growing quite rapidly, except for the United States because of death by despair. So long story short is when we underestimate how many years we have left, we undersave, we don't take care of our body as much, we're less focused on becoming a beginner or trying something new. And so underestimating how much life we have left is a problem. And the average age of the people who come to MEA, to the Modern Elder Academy, is 54. The average age they think they're going to live till is age 90. 54 is exactly halfway between 18 when you become an adult and 90. And so for most 54-year-olds, they would not look at their life and say, oh, I'm halfway through my adult life at age 54. Because in many ways, we have a society that says, like, at 54, you're planning on retiring and you're sort of later in life. But in fact, you're not, if, in a world that has growing longevity.
Yes. And yeah, I'd like to come back to some of the social implications of that. Kind of taking a step back a bit. So, how do you see aging? Do you see it as something to be embraced? So to set some context here, like a lot of perhaps the people who would listen to my podcast are thinking about fighting aging, right? It's like, how can I exercise? How can I
Yes.
take supplements to remain young, extend health span? So how do you see aging?
So it depends on what playing field we're talking about. If it's the physical playing field, which is how most of us think of aging as something that happens to us physically, then aging's generally a bad thing. So anti-aging feels good. There's a whole anti-aging industrial complex that's going to sell you products and services and supplements and things like that that are going to make you live longer and maybe hold off the aging process. But the physical body is not the only playing field to define aging. There is your emotional life. There's your relational life. There's your mental life. And there's a lot of evidence that shows that our crystallized intelligence grows and peaks in our early 70s. Um, Crystallized intelligence is our intuition, our ability to think holistically, systemically, etc. Our spiritual curiosity grows with age. So there are a lot of areas of our life that are not defined by the body that get better with age. So you asked me about my relationship with aging. I believe, I was on the TED stage last year, on a big TED stage, and I said a term that I hadn't planned on saying, but I said it and everybody went wild. And I said we need more pro-aging, not just anti-aging products and services. And so I let me explain why I said that. And pro-aging services help us to see what Becca Levy at Yale has shown in her research, that when we shift our mindset on aging from a negative to a positive, we gain 7.5 years of additional life, which is actually more life than if you actually stopped smoking at 50 or if you started exercising at 50. So what we also know is that one of the number one variable for living a healthy, happy, and longer life into our 80s and 90s is how invested were we in our social relationships in midlife. So in some ways, the things that create the longer life and create the better life are not necessarily physical. They are psychological and they're social, but we don't give that nearly enough attention. Instead, we have the famous tech bros of Silicon Valley saying, we're going to live forever. And, I think looking at all of the ways that we can increase longevity is a great thing. But that to live a long life that's not deep and meaningful at the same time, and socially connected, I'm not sure that that's the kind of life that most people want to live.
Are you stressed, having difficulty sleeping, or commonly getting cramps? You might be missing out on a key mineral. Did you know many Americans are low in magnesium? This powerhouse mineral helps your body in over 300 ways, including calming your nerves, relaxing your muscles, and helping you sleep better. Here are a few of the common signs of magnesium deficiency: feeling on edge or easily annoyed, tossing and turning all night, getting muscle twitches or cramps. Your blood pressure is a little high, but not all magnesium supplements are created equal. That's why I'm taking Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers. It's the only full spectrum magnesium with the 7 different forms that your body can benefit from. Are you ready to feel calmer, sleep better, and ditch those cramps? Here's what to do. Head over to bioptimizers.com/modern for a 10% discount with code MODERN10. For a limited time, you can get free travel-sized bottles of Magnesium Breakthrough with your purchase. And it comes with a 365-day money-back guarantee. You did talk a little bit about the benefits of aging. And so we talk about crystallized intelligence. What are some of the other things that we get better at as we get older?
So we definitely improve our emotional intelligence and emotional reactivity. What does that mean? It just means we're more self-aware. We can see the through line of our life. We understand our shadow side. We understand other people, frankly, more compassionate toward other people. We're less likely to be a pinball in a pinball machine when it comes to emotions, and react to people. So that gets better. Wisdom. Now, wisdom, I wrote a book called Wisdom at Work, The Making of a Modern Elder. And in that book, I say, like, there is very little correlation between wisdom and age. And that's a shocking thing, because our painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. So the longer you've been on the planet, the more potential for wisdom you have. But if you don't make sense of what you learn along the way and metabolize your experiences, you're not wise. And so, but on average, I would say that a person who is conscious and living a life that is listening to this podcast or this YouTube video is more inclined to actually learn from their lessons, and therefore wisdom improves with age. The ability to edit the things in your life you don't want to do anymore, or the people you don't want to see, or you getting clear that there are certain things that matter to you, but the rest of the other things don't matter. That gets better with age. We learn how to tune out the people and things that just aren't enriching us. And we also we learn to not personalize things and care so much what other people say about us. We also, as we get older, we start experiencing, hopefully, some time affluence. Maybe because our parents have passed, maybe because our kids, if we have kids, are empty nest. You're an empty nester and they've left home. So you have some space in your life, which gives you time and space to become a beginner again. Now, there are a lot of people in their 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s who are not becoming a beginner, but what a great opportunity. The question I like to ask myself that gets me to have the initiative to try something new is, 10 years from now, what will I regret if I don't learn it or do it now? And that's what led me to, at age 57, to start surfing and start learning Spanish. And then finally, I would just say that our spiritual curiosity about things beyond ourselves definitely grows with age. Some of that is a function of us getting curious about, the meaning of life, the purpose of life, what exists in life. But we also sort of learn how to integrate all of who we are, all of the different disparities. When you're younger, you compartmentalize. As you get older, you integrate. And Erik Erikson, the very famous developmental psychologist, said that the last stage of our life as an adult is really the stage of integrity versus despair. And integrity is learning how to integrate all of who you are into, how you show up in the world and make a difference. So there's a lot of things that get better with age. Yes, our short-term memory doesn't get better with age. Yes, our body looks worse with age, and we have more wrinkles, etc.
So I definitely like the chapter about caring less about other things. That is definitely true.
The F word.
Yeah, the F word. Yes, but it's so true. But the other thing, think about wisdom. So is there some process that you use to kind of distill wisdom, or to think about the things that have happened to you so that you actually learn from them? Because I would like to try and improve that.
That's a great softball question if you've read the book, because I have it exactly a wisdom process. It's like a wisdom practice. So I was a boutique hotelier. I started a
Mm.
hotel company when I was 26, which is sort of nutty when you think about that. And at age 28, I realized at 26, I thought I knew everything. At 28, I realized I knew very little. And my business was struggling. And I started a practice that I've been doing now for 35 years, from age 28 to now being 63. And that's the practice on the weekend. I would spend 20 to 30 minutes making a list of all the things, all my key lessons of the week. Often they were painful because our
Mhm.
painful life lessons are the raw material for our future wisdom. So I would make a list of bullet points of what did I learn this week? And then how would it serve me in the future? And what that did for me was something rather miraculous. It helped me accelerate my wisdom. And I now, for three different companies that I've helped lead, including Airbnb, which everybody's heard of, I was the mentor to the three founders. They called me the modern elder. I said, "You're making fun of my age." They said, "Chip, you're twice the age of all the rest of us, and you're as
Yeah.
curious as you are wise." And that's how I got the term modern elder applied to me. But what I learned, all three of these companies, Joie de Vivre, Airbnb, and MEA, is that you can sit down with your leadership team once a quarter and just say, what was each of our biggest lessons of the quarter and how is it going to serve us? And then also, what was our biggest lesson as a team?
Mm.
So wisdom is not like we tend to think of wisdom as like, oh, it's something that only the philosophers can do, or it's I don't know, Yoda in Star Wars has all the wisdom. You can have wisdom when you've made sense of what your life has been, what you've learned along the way. And so that's, wisdom is not, and wisdom is really important because all of the world's knowledge is on this darn little iPhone I've got, especially in the era of AI. So we're sort of moving, if knowledge is commoditized, we're moving into an era where wisdom is going to become more valuable. And therefore, I really think if we help people to metabolize their experience, they will get wiser. And if they get wiser, I think it's good for the world.
Yes. Yeah. So becoming a beginner again. So, so there's a couple of things in there. So you do need to become a beginner again. So you need a special kind of mind. You need kind of the growth mindset to be able to do that.
Yes.
You need to still believe that you can make those differences. So certainly be interested to think about that. Uh, and also, how would you choose what to do? Because one of the things I was thinking is, I don't want to be a dabbler. So suppose I'm 60, I'm going to live to 80, right? I don't want to be a dabbler. I want to be proficient at something when I get to 80. So what kind of thing should I choose?
Well, that's a great question and hard to answer because there's so many variables. But what I would
Mm,
say is the following. So there's some people who want to be a dabbler. There's some people who want to,
mm,
like, their personality type is such that they want to try a lot of different things. That's fine. Do
mm,
that. That's good for you. And then there's other people who, like, they want to do like what Peter Drucker, the famous management theorist, wanted to do. Is every 2 years he would learn a new topic that had nothing to do with being a business school professor or an author, because he just felt like becoming a beginner at something and learning it was like a fountain of youth for him. So the thing that I would focus on in terms of what you become really proficient at is something that you're really curious about and something that naturally you seem to gravitate to and have some talent in. So you say you don't want to be a dabbler, great. So you want to be very focused, and I would focus on whatever it is that you can find a state of flow in.
mm.
Mahali Csikszentmihalyi's perspective, who was a mentor of mine, and when you can get into a state of flow, you actually get to a place of not just exceptional proficiency and being world class at something potentially over time as you build that, but you also stop the clock. you are in such a timeless sense of awareness in being in flow that it's almost as if you've stopped time, and you have that beautiful sense of joy of being in the moment. And so that's what I would focus on. I don't know what that would be for you, but whatever it is, give it your all.
Right. Yeah. And yes, I like to think, it would be helpful if it's kind of social and active.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
because social is very important as well. So it's like tennis is one of the best
Oh, wait, you're
sports
not
for long.
tennis is great. And what about paddleball? Have you tried that, or pickleball?
No,
No?
not try. No, actually, I'm doing table tennis at the moment because,
Oh, table tennis. Okay.
yeah,
All
but
right.
tennis is the one that's been investigated more, and I would certainly like to do that. But table tennis is easier to do in Hong Kong.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Oh, Hong Kong. Yeah, no, it's big time in Hong Kong.
Yeah, yes. What do you see as the dangers of middle age? So as you come into middle age, what are the dangers that kind of crop up, and how to avoid them?
I think the dangers of middle age are getting stuck. And this is why MEA exists. If you're getting stuck, what's happening is you're stuck in a mindset that is often what's called a fixed mindset, based on Carol Dweck at Stanford's work. Um, and you don't see your options. So the risk in midlife is if you have a fixed mindset, you try to prove yourself and you define success as winning. But if you only like to play games that you can win, and you're in midlife and you're not willing to try other things to become a beginner, your sandbox you're playing in gets smaller and smaller.
Mm.
So what I will say is that I think a lot of people who get stuck in midlife get stuck because they don't understand the options they have available to them. And they actually are still in the accumulating phase. So the first half of our adult life is about accumulating knowledge and friends and lovers and partners and children and responsibilities and stuff. And then at some point you realize, like, oh my God, I've got so much. And it's now time to edit. And so at MEA, we call this, and in my book, Learning to Live Midlife, we call this the Great Midlife Edit. Because the second half of your adult life is about discernment and about getting clear on what's important to you. And therefore, it's the first half is about accumulating, the second half is about editing. And therefore, it's time for you to let go of some things. And that's very hard. It's hard to let go. It's hard to downsize. It's hard to shift your mindset. And that's part of the reason why a program like MEA, a midlife wisdom school, is essential, because doing it on your own is not easy.
Mm.
So I would say that the number one, to answer your question again, the number one challenge for people in midlife is getting stuck in all of the obligations and mindsets and ways that defined their first half of their adulthood. And they're not willing to shift to allow some of that to go away.
And this transition is not is it a quick thing, or I mean, do you think it would come? Well, it must come naturally to some people, but is there any way to
It's
kind of bring it on, or?
Well, I think, it's let me start by saying, having a collection of people in your life. We are two men, and men are so bad at this. Women are so much better at giving each other social support, and when they're going through
Mm.
challenges, talking about it. And men are not very good about this. And therefore, unfortunately, the male suicide rate is 4 to 5 times what the female suicide rate is. So a starting point for this in terms of how do you go through this is, yeah, you read great books, hopefully like
Mm.
Learning to Live Midlife. You potentially, in certain cases, if things are pretty serious, you might have a coach or a therapist. But you have friends that you talk to about this stuff. And I mean, for example, finding a book that you love that speaks to the life stage of midlife and doing a book club and talking about, as a book club, like, okay, what are we supposed to learn from this? I mean, that's very helpful. And then there's programs like MEA. You're in Hong Kong, and so we've had a few people from Hong Kong actually come to MEA in Mexico, and now with our US campus opening. But most people can't do that. So there's online programs, and there's online programs where you can connect with other people globally that allow you to talk about what it's like to be in midlife and to be in a group of people who are all going through something together. When we're in our teen years, adolescence, we have a peer group and we have all kinds of support. And we're going through firsts a lot. We're going through like this first and that first, and we're going through a lot of challenges, but we have so much support. Although let's be honest, that today being an adolescent is much more painful than it was 30 years ago, probably because of social media. But then we go through midolescence. Midolescence is the adult corollary to adolescence, when we're going through hormonal, emotional, physical, and identity transitions. And we do not have a peer group that we're going through this with. And that's why MEA exists. And that's part of the reason we have, people from 47 countries who have come to our Baja campus alone. And that number will increase quite a bit over the next couple of years as we have a US campus opening this spring.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, you would get so there may be some external changes that are happening, but you also need like the internal change, like the transition. Otherwise, you just take yourself along to the next stage.
Yeah.
Which doesn't really help.
Yes.
Yeah.